NFL Week 7 has concluded. We already have eyes on NFL Week 8. Lots of fun matchups. There's not as many bye weeks this week, so we certainly have a few games that we're going to talk about. We are Statletics. For those of you who do not know this, we love breaking down the big games. We rely on our model projections for those games as well. For this particular show, we have about 5 games that we want to discuss. We're going to try to get to more to break down in detail. But we'll try to cover as many games as we possibly can. So before we do that, Beach, welcome back. How we doing? First pod in almost a month together.
That's insane, man. It's been too long. I'm doing good. The season's almost halfway over. It just makes me really sad. I just thought about that a second ago. So it's been a good one so far, but I expect it to ramp up and get even better as we continue going.
Yeah. Next week is officially the halfway mark for the 2024 season, which is an awful thing because time flies. So much football is already behind us, but so much football is still ahead of us. So that's good. What is good is, though, for the model, it's converging on some numbers. It's slowly getting better and better. And we're seeing that with the results week in and week out. On your screen right now, you can see the model projections if you just want to pause it here and take a look, or you can go to our Twitter account and find it at Statletics_. We post these every week. We're fully transparent. These are strictly statistical based, and it does not account for momentum or injuries unless those injuries are at the quarterback position. So take that into account, but these are our analytical projections for what the numbers think. Obviously, there's a level of discernment and a level of interpretation that goes into it, and that's something that we feel like we can do pretty well. So, and we're going to use those to our advantage as we talk about some of these bigger games on the week. Kind of on the slate here, we're going to talk about the Bills and Seahawks, the Falcons Bucs, Cowboys 49ers, the Eagles and Bengals, in which feels like a do or die game for those for the latter two right there. Then we're going to try and get to the Colts Texans and the Vikings and the Rams, and then finish off with a little rapid fire picks from either what we think is the model is going to happen or just some gut feels. So before we get into the first game, Beej, I have some snap reactions. The injuries continue. It's an onslaught. Last night, Monday Night Football, we saw both Tampa Bay star receivers go down and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Why was Godwin still playing at the end of that game? I mean, hindsight's 2020, but come on. It's
30 seconds, feel for the broke guy. His ankle in half. You can't do that.
You just really feel for the guy. So we'll dive into that more when we talk about the Falcons and Bucs divisional game, which has huge implications, even though we're only halfway through the season. Secondly, what I will be watching for this week are a couple things, but one of them in particular, Russell Wilson, after his performance on Sunday Night Football, can he continue that performance? We saw a slow start out of him in the first half, but then all of a sudden you see him and George Pickens just have this, like, kindle this special connection. And the offense kind of felt rejuvenated and refreshed to some degree. So one thing I'm going to be watching for is how can he take advantage of a really bad Giants defense on Monday Night Football, and can he kind of cement his status as the starter, as the leader of this Steelers offense, and make a playoff run, Beach? It's your Steelers, man. You feeling good?
Hey, 5-2's got me feeling pretty good with a quarterback who can throw the ball now. I mean, I thought it was interesting them talking about how Russ just gives his receivers a chance. You know, and he, a lot of times in single coverage, nothing's there. He will put up this little nice floating moon ball, and you know what?
It's beautiful.
If the defender has his back turned, I give the receiver like a 65% chance to catch that ball every time. So I've been excited about it. I can't believe how many yards he had, to be honest with you. I know a bunch of them were chunk plays, but that's the Russell Wilson of old that we've been missing. So
yeah,
I'm excited about it.
It was good to see it back. I was always a big proponent of Russ. I will die on a hill that he does belong in the Hall of Fame. He was Peyton Manning with legs at one point in the past. So love to see him back in a groove a little bit, and hopefully he can continue that. Speaking of the injuries, there are 2 more kind of big injury situations that we'll be watching for as well. The 49ers offense just continues to be decimated. Brandon Ayuk out for the season. And then Debo is in the hospital with pneumonia, stuff in his lungs. We'll be keeping an eye on that as we talk about the Cowboys and the 49ers game. But something to watch for is can they stay relevant? This offense has struggled. Now they've lost to a really good Chiefs team, but they just kind of kept shooting themselves in the foot over and over. No pun intended with Pearsall, but it's Pearsall time. Jawan Jennings is also questionable. He missed last week with a hip injury, so we'll be watching that as well, but more to come in the big game breakdown. Lastly, we wanted to go over the Bills and Commanders game. We still might in the latter half of the show, but Jaden Daniels out with a rib injury. I don't think he's going to play this game. I think they're going to play it safe and give Marcus Mariota the nod as they face off against the Bears at home on Sundays. There's a lot going on. I feel like even though I just talked through all that, I mean, we had the suspension of Jameson Williams. That's big news, but he's only out 2 games. So whatever. Cooper Kupp might be traded. Something to watch for ahead of Thursday night. But we can't unpack it all. We have games to talk about. Before we dive into the first game, this show is brought to you by Not Beer, American sparkling water. Never a bad time to have a Not Beer. It's a beautiful fall drink. You can mix it with anything, or you can just enjoy it as itself. Very mild sparkling water. Enjoy it every Saturday morning before the football slate, college football slate, that is. So find those links in the comments, either the Amazon purchase link, excuse me, or you can check out the store locator, find a store near you where you can buy some Not Beer. It's good stuff. So
I like how it was a summer drink a couple weeks ago, and now it's a fall drink. It's an all-purpose.
It's an every time drink.
Every time drink.
We fit our circumstances. Yeah. Bills go to the Seahawks, and I am more excited about this game than I think others are. It's not like a high-profile divisional or a conference game, but these two teams, momentum forward for both of these teams. We have the Seahawks that just ripped apart the Falcons last week, and then the Bills, who are just the Bills, and they're only getting stronger. And Amari Cooper seems like he's going to fit right in on the offensive side of the ball. So I wanted to talk about this game just because it's going to be kind of a duel between two really high-caliber offenses and two defenses. The Bills, we like to think of as always having a historically strong defense. They're more beatable than they ever have been under the Sean McDermott era. So this might be a really, really fun offensive bout. So, Beach, as we talk about this Bills-Seahawks game, we talk about the Seahawks gaining momentum. Seahawks are +3 home dogs. So, in the 12th man, I know how much you like home dogs. Before I get into the numbers and all of that, what do you think about this game? Gut feeling, who do you think is going to win and why?
I'm just going to start off by saying that I like Seattle to cover 3 at home. I do. Now, I saw a stat the other day. I don't know if this is the exact number, but I think it was that Geno attempts 7, like on average, 7 more passes than any other QB, and they throw it like 50 times a game. And that
Absolutely
is exciting football because that stops the clock, and it's a lot more chances for bigger plays. So I expect this game to be a nice little shootout for us, especially with Amari Cooper getting a second weekend with the Bills offense. When it's led by Josh Allen, they can do whatever they want. So I'm very excited to watch this game, underrated game. As far as the defenses go, I just think that it's going to be shot all game. So there's a lot of variance in that, with busting coverage and everything like that. The one thing that I would point out is that DK Metcalf is week to week with an MCL. So if they were to do that, it's going to be, what'd you say, Jake Bobo, JSN, and Tyler Lockett. We know Kenneth Walker can run the ball, and should be a really exciting game.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and dive into the numbers here. I have some actionable stats to talk about in this game that I really think will paint a picture of how this game might go. Buffalo offense, obviously they're a top 5 unit, 5th overall in EPA per play, 13th overall in success rate. Seattle defense, they've gotten better, but they're still not there yet. They're 19th overall in EPA per play allowed on the defensive side of the ball. Where I think the Bills can really exploit this team, though, is on the ground. Seahawks, they are 27th in the league in rushing yards per game allowed at 145 yards per game given up per game. Buffalo offense, they're 11th overall in the league in rushing yards per game, averaging 123 yards. And we've seen the emergence of Ray Davis alongside of James Cook. So they're really becoming a strong 1-2 punch. And how elite of a route runner that Josh Allen can be. So that's kind of one of the things. Like, we do not expect the Seahawks offense or the Seahawks defense to really stop the Bills whatsoever. And we expect that the Seahawks offense will be able to kind of exploit this Bills defense. We look at the Bills defense, they're 18th overall in passing yards per game, whereas the Seattle offense, first overall. Seattle offense is also first overall in pass rate over expectation. Now, that number might dip due to what you said with DK Metcalf, but I don't expect really somebody to come off the bench like Jake Bobo. I expect just more work for Tyler Lockett, for JSN, and especially for Noah Fant, because Noah Fant's going to kind of take into that big guy role. Obviously he's no DK Metcalf, but they're going to need somebody with a profile like DK Metcalf to win the jump ball matchups. I don't think JSN and I don't think Tyler Lockett are really going to do that, but this offense can still be explosive. It's just how much can they capitalize and take advantage at home. Now, Kenneth Walker too, fully expect him to get even more involved because they're lacking in the rushing game. 29th overall in rushing yards per game. He did miss a couple of drives, but they really need to lean on him to kind of establish the run. That's an old cliche. I don't even think that running the football is like the key to success in today's game nowadays, but they can't go in there, throw the ball 100 times, and then not take over some clock, because the Bills, what they're best at is grinding it out. They actually don't average a lot of plays per game on the offensive side of the ball. The Bills do not. But what they do well is they grind teams out, they wear them down, and they take advantage of the fact that they are just stronger than everybody on the offensive side of the ball. So do you think the Seahawks can be physical enough to match this Bills physicality at home?
I don't know if they can be, but I do not expect that pass rate over expectation to drop at all. I know the DK's out, but I mean they sling the tater all across the field, and I'd be interested to see if the way that they use their running game is kind of more like an extension in the RPO and short game passes, especially to Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I don't know if they will put them both on the field and then motion Charbonnet out. I don't think they've really done that a lot this year, but you got to change it up based on your personnel. So I don't think that they are going to be able to match up physically with the Bills, but I do think that Geno's throwing it 55 times. If the Bills aren't using clock management well, because if they are able to establish run of Fred Davis and James Cook and spell each other, then it could be a lot scorer game than we think, because the Bills have the ball for 20 more minutes than the Seahawks. Kind of the same way Tennessee gets beat up by teams that can hold the ball. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
they need to exploit it, and they can. The Bills have a beatable rush defense. They're 24th overall in rushing yards per game allowed. They're allowing 140 yards on the ground, surprisingly. So they can do it. It's just a matter of will the Seahawks do that? So that's the key to success here, in my opinion. Our projections actually like the Seahawks to cover, not win. It has Bills by 1, but in all honesty, give me the Bills to go into the 12th man and upset the Birds.
That's bad.
Who we got? Are we beer betting
That's
this?
a bad pick. You want to make the first one? We'll start up. It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah.
We got the beer
first
bet on the
game
board.
beer bet.
+3. Birds.
Bills -3. Starting off the week hot. All right. Guys, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and comment your favorite picks as well for week 8. We love scanning the crowd for that information. Let us know why you like a certain team, who you like as a slate pick. So we love scanning the crowd for that information. It's always fun to go back and check them out. So Falcons go to the Bucs. The reason I have this game is second. We'll talk about the Eagles and the Bengals next, but the reason I have this game secondly is because of the divisional implications in this game. This is a huge game, especially after the Falcons lost last week. So the Falcons ended up beating the Bucs earlier this year on Thursday Night Football in a crazy game. This one it's not a playoff game, obviously. We're not even halfway through the season yet, but there are huge implications down the road because the Bucs won't have another chance to take a hack at the Falcons to try and get atop of this division. So right now, these teams are alone at the top. The Saints and the Panthers are not. I think they've pretty much cemented themselves at the bottom for the foreseeable future. Obviously, the Panthers have. The Saints, they're going to have to crawl their way back out. But huge game between the NFC South foes, Falcons, and the Bucs. Falcons have to travel to Buccaneers. Bucs lost Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Huge losses. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. So, real quick, Beach, I will go over some of the numbers here. The spread here is Bucs plus 2.5 at home. The model has Bucs plus minus 2.5 at home. And now again, one thing I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the model does not take into projections, or it doesn't take in injuries into the projections unless it's the quarterback position. So obviously the model does not know that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are not playing. So how much do you weight their absence on the field? Can you put a numerical tag on that? Can you put a number on their presence or their absence, that is? And the Falcons, if you look at the numbers from last week's game against the Seahawks, specifically the net success rate, they actually had a better net success rate than the Seahawks. It's one of those Sam hopping graphs where you see, do we really get beat that bad? So from a success rate and an EPA perspective, they didn't get beat that bad by the Seahawks. And we know that because they had that fluke scoop and score fumble from Kirk Cousins near the end of the game that made the score look a lot worse than it actually was. So the Falcons, we still know them to be a good team. They do have their fallacies, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They cannot rush the passer. Baker still having a great year. I still think he can elevate his receivers, but Beej, how much are you worried about the lack of two superstar receivers for the Tampa Bay Bucs?
I'm worried, but I will say in the game Monday night against the Ravens, it wasn't really garbage time points. It was comeback mode points. Mm-hmm. They were able to utilize K-Dot, and I think he had like 10 catches or something in the middle of the field. Jalen McMillan is a really not proven yet rookie, but he's got a lot of potential there. I think they have Sterling Shepard now. Is that right?
Sterling Shepard, he's running predominantly out of slot. Jalen McMillan, he's that guy. And then they also have young guy Trey Palmer. So he'll get a lot of action as well.
Yeah. And I think the reason I'm not as worried, obviously you want Mike Evans and you want Chris Godwin out there. But the reason I'm not as worried is because, like if there was like a dog ranking, I'm pretty sure Baker is number 1 or number 2. I don't know who would be in front of him, but, he does elevate the players around him, and the team really rallies behind him. And I think they're in wounded animal mode. This game has a lot of implications. They're at home. They're home underdogs. Are you kidding me? I don't think that what you were saying about the Falcons game last week, I don't think that they didn't lose that bad. The score doesn't reflect what happened in the game. But I do think that the Bucs get up for this game. A lot of people are down on them because they're missing their top 2 receivers. And I think that they're going to be able to cover the spread at home.
This game, I think there's even more variance to trying to pick who's going to win this game. One, from a statistical modeling perspective, and just from a vibes perspective, as well as a football knowledge perspective. There's going to be a lot of offense in this game. There's going to be no shortage. I think even without those 2 elite guys on the perimeter for the Bucs, there's going to be a lot of offense. The reason I say that, when you look at the Atlanta offense versus Tampa Bay defense, Atlanta offense 8th overall in EPA per play, 9th overall in success rate, and 6th overall in passing yards per game. You flip it over, Tampa Bay's defense is 16th in EPA per play allowed, 25th overall in success rate allowed, and 28th overall in passing yards per game allowed. Now, some of those numbers were diluted by Lamar's performance and Derrick Henry's performance, but still, nonetheless, they carved him up, and the stats show. Now, for Tampa Bay offense, there's the same story, really the same exact narrative, actually. 7th overall in EPA for the Tampa Bay offense, 6th overall in success rate on the offensive side of the ball, comparatively speaking, to Atlanta's 23rd overall in EPA per play allowed, and 27th overall in defensive success rate, which is just offensive success rate allowed. Atlanta's also hemorrhaging yards in the rushing game. They're giving up 143 rushing yards per game. And Tampa Bay's offense has kind of had a resurgence of the rushing game. You now have a 3-headed monster in that backfield with Bucky Irving, Rashad White, and Sean Tucker. And I really think that they're going to be an even more focus in this offense, especially with those 2 guys out. Now, you can argue that teams are going to pay more attention. They're going to load up the box, but that's where, we still believe that Baker Mayfield can elevate the guys around him. So I still think they'll absolutely be just as dangerous, not just as dangerous, but close to just as dangerous on the offensive side of the ball as they were with those two guys. Now you remove a huge threat out of the red zone with Mike Evans, and then you remove like your safety blanket and your playmaker, one of the best receivers between the 20s out of Chris Godwin. So somebody's going to have to step into those roles. And I think they can do that. But with that being said, Beach, I'm not going to give up on my birds. I think Kirk Cousins is going to come out here and shred this really bad Tampa Bay defense. Bijan, we saw him come back onto the scene. He's relevant again. This running game finally has its leg underneath themselves. I take the Falcons and another close one to top the division here in the NFC South.
I didn't say the Falcons were going to lose.
We'll have another beer bet, but I can't pick against my Falcons.
That's fine. I didn't say they were going to lose. I'd like Tampa to cover.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry. I took Tampa with the points out.
Gotta be
safe.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, real quick. This is one of our favorite games, everybody. What college does Sean Tucker go to?
I don't know. I'm not going to know.
I'm pretty sure it's Syracuse, but it was either Syracuse or Illinois. I know it's orange. But I remember watching him in college. Absolute monster.
Syracuse. You were right.
Syracuse, baby. Come on.
Okay. Let's do this real quick. Where did Bucky Irving go to college?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, Oregon.
Yep.
Let's go.
All right. We could do that all day long, so we got to be careful. If we get going, we won't stop. Okay, Beach. Eagles travel to Cincinnati, play the Bengals. This is a very important game for both of these teams, specifically the Bengals. They're still under 500 right now on the season, so Bengals are really in must-win mode, and surprisingly, this might be a good chance to do so against the Eagles defense that is really suspect right now. Eagles also, they had a great outing against the New York Giants, but let's be real, it's the New York Giants. They still have to prove themselves against a team that we feel is, you can actually respect the fact that you beat them. So I hope I was tracking there. I hope that was making sense. But big game for Joe Burrow and company as they try and keep their playoff hopes alive. Big game for Nick Sirianni as he tries to win back the hearts of the Eagles fans. So Bengals are 2.5-point home favorites. So not really that often we ever see the Eagles as underdogs, even though they are going to Cincinnati on the road to face Joe Burrow. Now, just to be fully transparent about what the projections say, beforehand too, the model does have Bengals almost at 2.5, so right around the Vegas line as well. So there's really no discrepancy in the model comparative to what we see in Vegas. So nothing to take away there, Beach. But right now, as we see it, we see 66% of the bets on the Eagles, 73% of the money on the Eagles. So it's kind of pouring in on the Eagles. Now, obviously, that doesn't really tell us anything because there's a lot of dumb people that bet. So I just like looking at that just to see what the public perception is. It's kind of fun. But Beach, similar story to what we just talked about with the Falcons and the Bucs. Obviously, it's not a divisional game, but if you look at the profile of these two teams, really solid offenses, great offenses, really, when they, all things are firing as expected, against two really not that good defenses. Cincinnati offense, 4th overall in EPA. Philly's defense, 22nd overall in EPA per play allowed. Cincinnati's offense is 7th overall in success rate, 7th overall in passing yards per game. Whereas Philly's defense, 16th overall in success rate, 22nd overall in passing yards per game. I don't want to just ramble numbers, so I can get to the Phillies offense versus Cincinnati's defense, but it's a very, very similar story. In this game, what's your gut feeling? Do you expect a lot of points? Do you think it's going to come down to the last minute? I mean, this is really going to be a crapshoot, So one of these defenses is going to have to step up, make some big plays, so that the other offense just doesn't gain momentum and take advantage of the poor defense that's being played up until this point. What's your gut feeling about this game? Who do you think wins?
Yeah, no, I do expect a lot of points. This is the week 7, week 8, week 9, that's when you see it's really do or die mode for a lot of teams moving forward with all the injuries piling up and like the divisional implications. You got to get some W's here, and this is when we see teams really turn a corner. And I'm not saying the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl, but I really think that they're going to make a statement in this game, being at home. If they don't win this game, what are they sitting at? 3-5 in a good NFC North division with the Ravens and the Steelers both being 5-2. So they really got to win this game. They've got 2 wide receiver ones, and Joe Burrow's been able to find everybody all across the field. But at the same time, their defense is not going to stop anybody, and the Eagles definitely have the firepower to exploit it. So I would expect a lot of points here. I do want to take the Bengals to cover the 3 at home. I'm going to go with a Evan McPherson 54-yard game-winning field goal in regulation. Does not go to overtime in regulation.
Okay, so you mentioned the defense real quick. I want to list off some numbers for some context. Cincinnati defense, 27th overall in EPA per play allowed, 31st overall in success rate allowed. They're hemorrhaging yards in their running game. Rushing yards per game, 28th overall, allowing 146 yards per game on the ground. Not a good look for the defense, especially against a team where Saquon Barkley is coming out running. Like he is shredding people in the rushing game. So this does not bode well for the Cincinnati Bengals. But to your point, if the Bengals can open up the floodgates on the offensive side of the ball and kind of put this Eagles offense in a bad spot, I think they could actually do something with this game. I actually really like the Bengals from a more vibes perspective. I hate saying that, but the numbers can tell us what the numbers can tell us. But you look at some of these teams that the Bengals have played to. The first game, Bengals played the Chiefs. Now, Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes hasn't played as great as we would expect, but they were still a fully healthy Chiefs team. We saw a lot of explosive plays out of Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. Then they played the Commanders, and we know how good the Commanders' offense is, and we know how good Jaden Daniels has been. Then they played the Panthers. Can't really speak for them on that. But then they went and played the Ravens, and they gave up 41 to the Ravens. But, it feels like everybody is getting torched by Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Then they went on to play the Giants. They actually held the Giants to 7 points. Then they played the Browns, held the Browns to 7 points until they scored in the latter half of the fourth quarter and made it 14-21. So how much of these numbers are, I don't want to say, obviously you got to play better against those teams, especially if you want to go to the big dance. But how much of that is like, they just had a bad run at it. In 3 of their first 4 games, they've played Patrick Mahomes, Jane Daniels, and Lamar Jackson. That's kind of a bad, that's a bad run if we're being honest. So maybe they can get their feet under them defensively speaking, come out here and play a little bit better on that side of the ball, force just a couple stops against the Eagles defense and allow their offense to capitalize on that. So I like the Bengals to win at home. I really do. I'm with you.
I just think it's a context game. You got to take this time in the season, this opponent, what the game looks like it's going to shape up to be, like all into context, because I think they need this one really bad.
Yeah, me too. I think in a do or die game, I like the Bengals to take it home. Speaking of do or die games, Cowboys travel to San Francisco to play the 49ers. Both of these teams desperately need this win, for the context of the NFC. Divisionally speaking, the 49ers still have a better chance than the Cowboys do to top their division. But, it's looking bleak for both of these teams right now. Cowboys are coming out of a bye, so they have the upper hand in that regards. 49ers are decimated on the offensive side of the ball. We talked about the injuries at the beginning. I won't really run down those again, but they're really missing all of their superstars. George Kittle also has a sprained foot and could miss this game as well. So it is very well in the realm of possibility that their starting lineup will consist of Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and Jordan Mason, and then whoever else, tight end and wide receiver. So this game, the 49ers and the Cowboys both need it. We know that. It's going to be really hard to kind of decipher and discern the performance of these two teams because we don't know what the game plan is going to be. We don't know how much that Kyle Shanahan's going to lean into the running game because of the lack of weapons in the passing game, because the Cowboys do have one of the worst, if not the worst, rushing defense in the league. But at the same time, if the Cowboys come out firing, they have a great game plan and they get ahead early and exploit a 49ers defense that is definitely not what it has been in the past couple of years. They're going to have to open up the passing game and try and keep up. So there's a lot of different angles you can look at this game, but we're just going to start from the top. Beach, 49ers are still 4-point home favorites against this Cowboys team. Kind of an insult to the Cowboys, but I respect it. I really do. If we go and look what the model projections say, the model has this game has the 49ers as a 5-point favorite at home. So really no discrepancy in the model in Vegas. I don't want to dive too much into the numbers yet. Beej, what's your gut feeling about this game? Do you think the 49ers can kind of set the tone, or do you think the Cowboys will have a good plan coming out of the bye weekend against this decimated 49ers team?
Yeah. If there's a couple things we can agree on, the Cowboys are dog water, and Kyle Shanahan knows how to win ball games. Only thing that's holding me back here, I really don't have a side here based on the performance of the team so far. The only reason that I think that the Cowboys can hang in there is because coming off their bye, mid-season bye, got to change it up, got to turn around, and this is the game to do it. There's a lot of games like that this week. And, they came off of a horrible game. Who did they get killed by? Who did they get killed by 2 weeks ago? Cowboys. The Lions, 47-9. No, the Lions, 47-9.
They got killed by the Saints at the beginning of the year.
I know.
The Saints.
I know. The 49ers should be able to run the ball. If they can do that, I think they will continue to do it until it's going to be stopped. If that's the case, then I think it's a closer game than it could be because the less explosive plays. I really don't have a feel or side here. The Cowboys are terrible. But coming off the bye, I do think that they start to look like, the Cowboys, the regular season Cowboys of old. Because we know what they do in the playoffs. But I would have to lean the 49ers winning and covering at home. I just don't know because of coming off bye.
Yeah.
What you got?
Yeah, and the logistic model has the 49ers, they give them a 71% chance to win this game, which that's a wide margin comparatively speaking to what we see with some of these other games. Now, I got to bump that down a little bit just in my head because of the lack of talent or the lack of guys that they will have in the offense, the lack of weapons, as well as this is a rivalry game in some regard. So got to take that into account. But, man, 70% chance to win from a statistical perspective is frightening. And it's not only because the Cowboys have a awful defense, especially in the rushing game. We look at these numbers. They're 26th overall in rushing yards per game allowed, giving up 144 yards per game on the ground. They're dead last in passing yards per attempt allowed, averaging 8.76 yards per attempt allowed in the passing game. So they have really no way to stop these teams unless they come out with a great strategy and they can take advantage of the fact that the 49ers are trotting a bunch of second and third stringers out there. It's looking bleak on the defensive side of the ball. But the problem with that is they could get away with it like some of these teams like the Bengals and the Eagles and the Falcons and the Bucs do. But they don't have the offense to do that. Their offense is also bad. And if we talk about the numbers and some of the advanced metrics, 25th overall in EPA margin on the offensive side of the ball, 25th overall in offensive success rate, especially in the rushing game. They're 30th in rushing success rate in the rush game. So not good. Pair that with a bad defense, it's a recipe for disaster. Absolute recipe for disaster. So as much as I want to bet on Dak Prescott and company and CeeDee Lamb taking advantage of the fact that the 49ers will be probably the worst they've ever been from a roster standpoint, I can't do it. I truly cannot do it. I think the 49ers at home and Kyle Shanahan will figure out a way to just I think Kyle Shanahan is just that good of a play caller that he'll still find a way to exploit. I mean, we'll have guys like, I mean, it almost feels like every year there's some, obscure running back that Shanahan finds that ends up being an absolute stud. We've seen that year in, year out. He really generates a lot of players and puts them in position to be successful. So I can't get behind this Cowboys team who not only sucks on the defensive side of the ball, but they can't put anything together on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm trusting the model here. Give me the 49ers to win and to cover at home in a bounce back game where they're coming off of a very frustrating loss in the Super Bowl rematch against the Chiefs. So I like the 49ers speech. Any rebuttals?
The Cowboys it's week 8. They have 10 offensive touchdowns.
Not good. 10. Not good when you just paid your quarterback $40 million.
I know.
So
I'm crazy. I think Cowboys cover.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
I have nothing except I'm just field guy,
Yeah.
Deshaun ACL, man. That's who I'm. It's field guy. I think they're gonna cover it. Football's crazy. You never know what's gonna happen.
It is crazy, and you know what? Like at this point, like anybody who slanders somebody else's picks, even if it's for the most dumb reason you could possibly ever imagine, like you have to respect it to some degree because this league is absolutely borked beyond all belief.
It's
absolutely
bonkers.
Borked. So, they're week in, week out. There's a lot of things that I can't believe. So, all right, that's that. Hey, let's wrap it up really quickly with a couple of quick picks. Beach, Thursday Night Football. We have the Vikings coming off of a really tough loss against the Lions. They travel to the Rams, who really, really need to win to stay in any sort of contention. Luckily, they're still alive in their division just due to the down year that their division is having. But Vikings, Rams, do the Vikings bounce back? Or do the Rams stay alive, showcase Cooper Kupp, and trade Cooper Kupp? Rams are 2.5-point home favorites. Vikings are -3 on the road. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Vikings have shown up this year to continue on this play. I think they're going to cover the 3.
I do too. Model has Vikings -3. We like it. Okay, hey, let's talk about the Bears and the Commanders really quick, just in case Jaden Daniels does play. Let's operate under the assumption that he does play, or maybe we don't even have to. Do we think that Caleb Williams continues his hot streak coming out of a bye weekend? Bears are 2.5 road favorites against the Commanders team, who, even though they lost Jaden Daniels, they performed relatively well on the offensive side of the ball, albeit against the Panthers. What do you think?
I'm checking Mariota's stats from last game. 18 for 23, 205 yards. I think the Commanders will win. I'm sorry. I think the Commanders will cover. We'll go with that. With the 2.5-point home dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. The two teams the Bears played before where they were really hot were the Panthers and the Jaguars, who get torched in the past game. I'm going to have them come back down to earth, and we're going to go with the Commanders to cover.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of like that.
Regardless if Daniels plays. If Daniels plays, definitely.
Yeah. Model has 22-21 in favor of the Bears. So it actually likes Commanders to cover the spread, but Bears still win. I'll ride the Bears with the model. So let's get frisky. Okay, Beach, last one that I wanted to talk about really quick in the quick pick section. Ravens are -8.5 road favorites against the Cleveland Browns. Now, let's get a little frisky. Jameis Winston is starting, and I really think at this point in time, you could say anybody would have been an upgrade at the quarterback position compared to what Deshaun Watson was giving us on the field. Jameis can come in here and really stretch the field vertically, and he's got some nice young receivers like Cedric Tillman. Hopefully he can rejuvenate Jerry Jeudy, maybe Elijah Moore even. He's obviously has David Njoku. But this coaching staff has proven to be really, really good. Kevin Stefanski is a really good play caller. Do you think Jameis could step in and make this a little bit frisky? I mean, 8.5, 9.5 is a lot of points for a home team that could come out firing.
I think he's got the balls to do it. I think he might throw
Ravens
3
defense
picks.
is beatable defense too.
It's a beatable
Very
defense,
beatable
but
defense.
it's Jameis. Remember, he had what was it, 30 touchdowns, 30 picks in a season?
Hey,
Whatever it was.
Peyton Manning in his first year led the league in interceptions. Look where he went.
Yeah, this is not James's first year. I think that they can 100% be better with Jameis. I think that the Ravens still cover in this game because the Browns defense is not as good as it has been. It's still good. And we've seen how Derrick Henry has just changed this passing offense, honestly, because you have to stop the big dog. And then you got Lamar running too. So I think the Ravens will cover. I think it's too early to say it. Chubb will be coming back and getting more of a load. You gonna say otherwise?
Browns cover it. Give me Jameis, dude. I'm taking this just for the sake of it. The model does have 26-18. So very similar to Vegas spread. It does have it slightly covering, but Jameis time. I love it. We
always love Jameis time.
I do love Jameis time. So, okay, guys, that wraps it up for the NFL Week 8 show. We apologize we can't get some more, but as always, big game breakdowns. We love talking ball and giving what the model projections like. So we will absolutely be back here next week to talk NFL Week 9. Signing off. Talk to you next week, Beach.